Firepower wins battles, but logistics wins wars. While tanks and fighter planes get all the glory, the Allied victory was built on the backs of thousands of trucks, tractors, and utility vehicles. Today, we are cataloging the complete arsenal of American military transport. From nimble frontline scouts to massive tank recovery behemoths, here is every major U.S. military truck and car used in World War II. Let's begin with the Willys MB. This is the undisputed icon of World War II mobility. It featured a 60-horsepower Go Devil engine and a rugged four-wheel drive system. Production was so massive that a new Jeep rolled off the assembly line every minute and a half. Interestingly, the iconic slotted grille originally featured 9 slots on early Ford versions before standardizing to the famous 7 slots. It was simply the most versatile light vehicle of the era. Next up, the Bantam BRC-40. This was the true pioneer of the quarter-ton scout car concept. The American Bantam Car Company actually designed the first prototype in just 49 days, although they lost the mass production contract due to factory capacity limits. Their core design DNA remained. Most of the roughly 2,600 units built were sent to British and Soviet forces via Lend-Lease. It successfully set the baseline for all Allied light reconnaissance. Let's continue with the Dodge WC-51. This became the standard 3/4-ton weapons carrier for the U.S. Army. It was significantly wider and lower than early war models, providing excellent stability off-road. Troops often mounted heavy M2 Browning machine guns in the rear cargo bed for direct infantry support. A rare fact is that its distinct open-cab design lacked roll-up windows entirely, relying instead on canvas side curtains. It formed the absolute backbone of infantry heavy weapons transport. Moving to the Dodge WCU-5E3 carryall. This acted as the frontline station wagon for officers and specialists. Unlike the canvas-topped utility trucks, the carryall featured a fully enclosed steel body. It was heavily favored by the Signal Corps for housing sensitive radio equipment in the harsh field environment. The vehicle shared the exact same wheelbase as the ambulance variant, but retained its side windows. It was the premier transport for regimental commanders on the move. Next is the Dodge WG-54 ambulance. This served as the primary medical transport across all theaters. The rigid steel body was designed specifically to accommodate 4 standard medical stretchers. Its suspension was specially tuned to provide a softer ride for wounded troops over ruined roads. It even featured a large cab-mounted forced air heater, which was a luxury rarely found in standard military trucks. This specific vehicle directly contributed to the high survival rate of injured soldiers. Finishing this section is the Dodge WC-56 command car. This was the general's transport of choice. It featured an open cab, folding map tables, and a specialized electrical system to power long-range command radios. General George Patton famously customized his WC-56 with an armored floor and twin air horns. Its high profile, unfortunately, made it a magnet for enemy snipers. This eventually led top officers to prefer the less conspicuous standard Jeep. Let's start the logistics backbone with the Chevrolet G506. This was the standard 1.5-ton cargo truck. It was powered by a highly reliable 83-horsepower inline 6 engine. Over 150,000 of these trucks were supplied exclusively to the Soviet Union. The Soviets prized them so highly they often preferred them over their own domestic trucks for towing artillery. It was a masterclass in American mass production. Next is the GMC CCKW 352. This is the legendary 2.5-ton Deuce and a Half. This specific model used a shorter wheelbase, which was optimized for towing artillery pieces around tight mountain turns. It featured a complex but incredibly durable split-type rear axle system. Over 500,000 were built, forming the lifeblood of the famous Red Ball Express supply line. Without this truck, the Allied advance across France would have stalled entirely. Moving on to the Studebaker US-6. This became the absolute workhorse of the Eastern Front. Unlike the GMC models, the US-6 utilized a heavy-duty Hercules engine designed to run efficiently on low-octane fuel. The US military rejected it for standard use, opting instead to export almost the entire production run to Russia. The chassis was so robust that the Soviets chose it as the primary platform for their devastating Katyusha rocket launchers. It was a vital tool for the Red Army. Let's examine the International Harvester M5H6. This became the standardized tactical truck for the US Marine Corps. It was uniquely engineered with a special front driving axle and a locking rear differential. These features gave it superior traction in the deep mud and coral sand of the Pacific Islands. Because Navy and Marine supply chains were separate from the Army, this truck virtually owned the Pacific theater. It was built perfectly for island hopping. Next up, the Diamond T968. This was the indestructible 4-ton cargo hauler. It was heavily utilized by the Army Air Forces for moving massive quantities of aviation fuel and bombs. The truck featured an entirely enclosed civilian-style steel cab in its early models, before switching to an open military cab. It was powered by a massive 529 cubic inch Hercules engine. It was severely over-engineered, rarely breaking down even under continuous heavy loads. Let's continue with the Autocar U8141T. This 5-ton tractor was a specialized pontoon bridge layer. It featured a cab-over engine design to keep the overall vehicle length short while hauling massive trailers. The truck was equipped with a heavy-duty winch behind the cab for maneuvering heavy bridge sections into rivers. It was the unsung hero of the combat engineers. It allowed armored divisions to rapidly cross the Rhine River. Moving to the Brockway B666. This was a 6-ton engineering marvel. The chassis was standardized across multiple manufacturers, but Brockway specialized in the heavy bridge erecting variants. It featured massive booms and twin hydraulic hoists capable of lifting heavy treadway bridge segments. The truck was powered by a mammoth 200 horsepower engine. It provided the raw lifting power needed for rapid frontline infrastructure repair. Next is the Mackinac. This 7.5-ton heavy artillery muscle was designed for one specific purpose. It towed the massive 155mm long Tom Field guns and heavy 8-inch howitzers. The truck featured a unique rear-mounted crane specifically to lift the heavy trail legs of the artillery pieces onto its towing hook. It utilized a massive overhead valve engine, producing incredible low-end torque. It completely replaced the slow crawler tractors previously used by heavy artillery regiments. Finishing the trucks is the Mack NR. This 10-ton giant was the long-distance supply specialist. Unlike most tactical trucks, it was strictly a rear-echelon diesel hauler. It operated primarily in the deep deserts of the Middle East and North Africa. It lacked front-wheel drive, relying entirely on its massive dual rear tires and sheer weight for traction. It was heavily used by the British Army to haul tank transporters across the sand. First in heavy recovery is the Diamond T969. This was the essential 4-ton wrecker for medium truck recovery. It was equipped with a specialized twin-boom wrecker bed. This allowed the crew to recover vehicles from awkward angles by utilizing 2 separate winches simultaneously. The wrecker could comfortably lift and tow completely disabled trucks back to depot lines. It was the busiest roadside assistance vehicle of the entire war. Next, the Ward LaFrance M1A1. This is the ultimate heavy recovery beast. It was a 10-ton wrecker explicitly designed to recover light and medium tanks. The M1A1 variant simplified the cab and removed the curved civilian-style fenders of earlier models for easier wartime production. It featured a massive engine and a front winch capable of pulling 20,000 pounds. It was a vital asset for heavy ordnance recovery teams. Let's look at the Diamond T980. This set the gold standard for tank transport. It was a 12-ton ballast tractor powered by a massive diesel engine. It didn't carry the tank on its back, but rather towed a massive 40-ton trailer. The truck bed was often purposely loaded with concrete or scrap metal just to provide enough weight for tire traction. It was extensively used to recover disabled Sherman tanks in North Africa. Next is the Pacific Car and Foundry M26 Dragon Wagon. This was an armored tank recovery giant. The cab was heavily armored to protect the crew while retrieving disabled tanks under direct enemy fire. It utilized a unique chain drive system for its tandem rear axles, giving it incredible battlefield durability. Powered by a 240 horsepower engine, it could pull a fully loaded trailer through ruined city streets. It remains one of the most imposing vehicles ever built. Moving to the M32 tank recovery vehicle. This was the Sherman-based battlefield lifesaver. Built on a standard tank chassis, the rotating turret was replaced with a fixed superstructure and a massive A-frame crane. Inside housed a 60,000-pound capacity winch to drag stuck tanks out of deep mud. It even carried a mortar mounted on the front to deploy smoke screens during active combat recoveries. It allowed armored divisions to recycle their damaged tanks rapidly. Let's begin tracked cargo with the M29 Weasel. This was a lightweight tracked cargo carrier, originally designed for winter commando operations. It featured extra-wide tracks that gave it a ground pressure lighter than a fully equipped infantryman. This allowed it to easily cross deep snow, bogs, and mud where Jeeps would instantly sink. It proved absolutely vital during the muddy, monsoon-soaked slog of the Okinawa campaign. Next is the M2 high-speed tractor. This compact prime mover was built to tow light field artillery. It utilized the exact same suspension system as the M3 Stuart light tank. It carried the gun crew, their personal gear, and a ready supply of ammunition directly on the chassis. It could achieve speeds up to 22 miles per hour. This was significantly faster than the towed guns could safely travel. Let's examine the M4 high-speed tractor. This was the heavy anti-aircraft and artillery puller. Based on the Sherman tank drivetrain, it was designed to tow heavy 90mm anti-aircraft guns. It featured a unique rear ammunition compartment with a built-in mechanical hoist. This crane helped exhausted crews load heavy artillery shells into the chassis. It completely revolutionized the mobility of heavy anti-aircraft battalions. Moving to the M5 high-speed tractor. This versatile medium tractor was built on the chassis of the older M3 Lee medium tank. It featured a front-mounted winch and a fully enclosed cab to protect the gun crew from the elements. It was widely used to pull heavy howitzers through the absolute worst terrain imaginable. Interestingly, many of these were supplied to the Soviet Union. The Soviets used them extensively during the final artillery push into Berlin. Next, the M2 half-track car. This was developed as an artillery tower and an armored scout vehicle. It featured a shorter body than the standard troop carrier, with ammunition storage compartments accessed from the outside. Its distinctive roller-mounted front bumper helped it cross trenches and ditches without burying its nose in the dirt. It provided excellent cross-country mobility. It gave scout teams a decent level of small arms protection. Let's look at the M3 half-track. This is the iconic mechanized infantry carrier. It was longer than the M2, featuring a rear door and dedicated seating for a 13-man rifle squad. The vehicle utilized a commercially available white engine, making it relatively easy for mechanics to maintain. Over 40,000 units were produced during the war. It served on every front and fundamentally changed how infantry kept pace with armored spearheads. Finishing the half-tracks is the M5. This was the Lend-Lease International standard. It was produced by International Harvester to meet massive Allied demand when other factories were full. It looked nearly identical to the M3, but was built using slightly thicker, fully welded steel armor. Its distinct rounded rear corners easily identify it from the sharp angles of the M3. Almost the entire production run was shipped to British, Canadian, and Soviet forces. Let's dive into amphibious operations with the WW2, famously known as the Duck. This game-changing amphibious supply truck was basically a standard 2.5-ton truck wrapped in a boat hull. It featured a centralized tire pressure control system, allowing the driver to inflate or deflate the tires from the dashboard. This was a revolutionary feature for sand traction in the 1940s. It completely bypassed destroyed port facilities by bringing supplies directly from ships to inland depots. Next is the Ford GPA Jeep. This was the Amphibious Jeep. While a brilliant concept on paper, it was heavily burdened by its own weight and rode dangerously low in the water. It struggled significantly in the rough surf of ocean landings and was quickly pulled from frontline US service. However, the Soviet Union received thousands via Lend-Lease. They found them absolutely perfect for crossing the wide, calm rivers of Eastern Europe. Moving to the LVT-2 Water Buffalo. This was the standard Pacific Theater landing vehicle, originally designed as a civilian rescue vehicle for the Florida swamps. The military quickly armored it for combat. It used tracks fitted with distinct cupped grouchers that acted as paddles in the water and treads on land. It was the only vehicle capable of carrying Marines directly over the razor-sharp coral reefs. It made the assaults on islands like Tarawa possible. Next, the LVT-4 Water Buffalo. This was the rear ramp innovation that saved countless lives. By moving the engine from the rear to the forward cabin, engineers were able to install a heavy drop-down ramp at the back. This allowed Marines to charge straight out the back, protected by the vehicle's steel bulk. Previously, they had to dangerously jump over the high exposed sides. It became the most widely produced amphibious tractor of the war. Let's shift to the Caterpillar D7. This was the rapid airfield builder. This massive diesel-powered bulldozer was the absolute weapon of choice for the Navy Seabees. It was entirely unarmored, yet operators frequently used it under direct sniper fire to carve out airstrips. The sheer earth-moving capability of the D-7 allowed the Allies to build operational bomber bases in the Pacific jungles in mere days. It was an unstoppable force. Next is the Caterpillar D-8. This massive earth mover was the heavy hitter of military engineering. Weighing over 34,000 pounds, it provided incredible pushing power for clearing heavy debris. It was frequently used to clear the rubble of bombed-out European cities so tanks could pass. It was powered by a massive 14-liter V6 diesel engine. The D-8 was instrumental in pushing heavy pontoon bridge sections into raging rivers. Moving to the Clark Airborne Dozer. This was a fascinating glider-deployed paratrooper dozer. It was intentionally scaled down to fit exactly inside the cargo hold of a standard transport glider. Airborne engineers used these tiny bulldozers to clear landing zones for reinforcing gliders immediately after a combat drop. Despite its tiny size, it possessed impressive pushing power. It successfully leveled countless makeshift airstrips behind enemy lines. Next up, the Clark-Door 6 towing tractor. You would constantly see this busy airbase bomber tug scurrying around flight lines. It was a heavy, low-profile tractor specifically designed to maneuver massive 4-engine bombers on the tarmac. It intentionally lacked suspension, providing a rigid, high-traction platform to pull thousands of pounds of aircraft. It kept the massive bomber wings sorted and operational. It was the unsung hero of the Army Air Forces. Let's roll with a Harley-Davidson WLA. This is the legendary Liberator motorcycle. Powered by a highly reliable flathead V-twin engine, it was the primary transport for military police and dispatch riders. It featured a heavy-duty luggage rack for radios and a distinctive leather scabbard for a Thompson submachine gun. Nearly 90,000 units were produced during the conflict. This made it the most ubiquitous military motorcycle in American history. Next is the Cushman Model 53 Airborne Scooter. This was the paratrooper's drop scooter. It was a rugged, stripped-down motor scooter designed to be airdropped by parachute or delivered by glider. It provided instant mobility for airborne messengers right after hitting the drop zone. It had no suspension, relying entirely on its thick balloon tires to absorb the shock of rough terrain. It was tiny, brave, and highly effective. Let's finish up with trailers, starting with the Bantam T3. This was the classic quarter-ton Jeep companion, engineered to perfectly match the track width and wheel hubs of the Willys Jeep. It seamlessly followed its towing vehicle anywhere. It featured a watertight steel tub, allowing it to easily float across rivers if perfectly loaded. It essentially doubled the cargo capacity of a standard infantry squad without slowing them down. Next, the Ben-Hur G518 trailer. This versatile 1-ton cargo hauler was heavily towed behind Dodge weapons carriers and medium trucks. It came in multiple variants, including a mobile water purifier, a field kitchen, and a heavy generator platform. It was equipped with its own manual parking brakes, allowing crews to secure it safely on steep inclines. Millions of tons of critical supplies reached the front lines inside these rugged trailers. Finally, the M9 Hanjinition trailer. This was the low-profile artillery resupply workhorse. It was heavily armored and designed to be towed directly behind high-speed tractors into combat zones. It kept thousands of heavy artillery rounds perfectly organized and immediately accessible for rapid-fire missions. By separating the heavy ammunition from the prime mover, it kept the main tractors light and mobile. It was the perfect logistics tool to end our list.